You are listening to continuing coverage of the trial of Chad Daybell from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast. Let's go back to the courtroom.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we're back on the record on CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. We've extended the morning recess to take up some administrative matters. In addition, counsel's been working on a proposed exhibit that would be proffered through the next witness that's not currently on the stand. However, in the interest of time and efficiency, there's been a request that the court consider a motion in limine ruling on a section of that exhibit. And so this is an appropriate motion to be heard outside the presence of the jurors. And I believe there's a contested issue on the exhibit. So at this time, what I'd like to do, if counsel's ready, is to have the state reference what is going to be proffered in the exhibit through an offer. The court will review that. I'll hear whether or not there's an objection to that section of the exhibit from the defense, and then I'll make a ruling so that we can have this exhibit, that particular slide, ruled on before the witness that would introduce the exhibit is on the stand. So if that's an okay manner in which to proceed, Ms. Blake, are you going to be arguing the motion?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. If you'd like to go ahead and argue your motion at this point then and reference which slide you believe is going to be contested here, and then I'll hear from the defense.
And Your Honor, may I remain seated at counsel table?
Yes.
So within this PowerPoint, it would be slide 18. That is the contested slide. I've handed the court a courtesy copy of the printout of the original exhibit. The actual exhibit will be placed on a thumb drive once we've made any additional modifications as required. It's slide 18 of 45 slides. It's the state's understanding that counsel would have an objection to this. I don't know if the court wants to hear what the objection would be first, or if the court would like the state to proffer why we believe that it would be admissible.
I think perhaps, Ms. Blake, if you would describe what slide 18 is showing, so we have that in the record, and then I'll hear whether or not there is an objection from the defense. I'll hear the objection, and then I'll hear a response from the state to the objection if there is one. So what is it on slide 18?
Thank you, Your Honor. On slide 18, it references a internet search conducted on the Homer J. Maximus account by Alex, the 6.5 Grendel drop from 100 to 200 yards, and also a visit to a site drop from 100 to 300 yards. This is in reference to the October 9th incident. Additionally, on the slide, there are two images. The images show an overview, an aerial photo essentially of the Daybell property. Within the Daybell property, we've heard before about the two driveways. There is one longer driveway, one shorter driveway. These particular images show a measurement to the end of the longer driveway from a tree on the property. They also show, the second photo shows a measurement from the end of the driveway, so closest to the house and furthest from the house, those 2 points on the driveway, and a measurement to that tree. Then beneath them, it references distance from tree to end of driveway, 312 feet or 104 yards. The other one, distance from tree to corner of sidewalk, 189 feet, 63 yards. And then would the court like to hear argument?
I'll hear from the defense at this time. Mr. Pryor, have you been able to review slide 18?
Yes, Judge.
And is there an objection to that part of this proposed exhibit?
Yes, Judge.
I also don't even know if I clarified on the record. What is the proposed exhibit number, Ms. Blake?
It is 398.
Exhibit 398. Thank you for clarifying that. So we're discussing slide 18 of exhibit 398, proposed, not yet admitted. Mr. Pryor, any argument as to why you think that would not, should not come in?
Judge, the discussion that took place from the previous witnesses talked about the driveway that's identified off of Salem Road, and the words Salem Road are on this proposed exhibit, and that's the short driveway. That's where the state presented evidence regarding the paintball gun and then the encounter Ms. Daybell had with a paintball gun I don't see any relevance with putting a measurement at the end of the long driveway, and even just because it was mentioned. But Judge, every aspect of this property was mentioned. And what the state is trying to do is trying to take an arbitrary point at the beginning of the long driveway and then another arbitrary point at the end of the long driveway, and extending that out to the area where J.J. Vallow's remains were found without any information or any evidence whatsoever to suggest that there was ever any attempt or even a plan to engage in some sort of a shooting out there. And the state has presented nothing, at least at this point, to suggest that. And they can't just take an arbitrary point, Judge. That would allow them to take an arbitrary point at any point of the property, measure out 200 to 300 yards anywhere, and that's really what they're doing here. And then there is no relevance to this. And again, it's merely designed to just inflame the jury and try to support their so-called theory that paintball gun was something other than a paintball gun.
All right, Ms. Blake, what's the response from the state on the objection to slide 18?
Thank you, Your Honor. The state's response, first, the state would respond that there absolutely has been evidence presented. Tammy's own words, she refers to it as a rifle. She also uses the word paintball gun. She also uses the word gun. She says a person was standing there pointing it at her, pulling the trigger. She also indicates the person was standing there shooting at her. She references that she had fear. In addition to that, the state would indicate that this driveway absolutely became an issue during the testimony of Detective Kaikamanu. As part of the cross-examination, a significant length of time was spent on the driveways. There was some done on redirect, but the bulk of that was done through cross-examination. There's also been testimony regarding Alex purchasing a ghillie suit that could be a cover. There's also evidence of the Homer J. Maximus account searching Grendel 6.5 drop from certain locations, including long-distance shots. There's been testimony regarding the shooting ranges and some of the distances that were being practiced or where a device associated with Alex was. However, the state's main argument is, I think, given the questioning done by defense counsel of several witnesses suggesting the shooting ranges were done in preparation for hunting, that a hunting license may have been obtained, as well as during the testimony of Detective Kaikamanu on cross, there were questions about the potential that Chad Daybell was a target and the vehicle driven. So I think at this point, the door has been open for the state to be able to talk about the potential that the tree would be a place where an individual could be concealed while matching up with the searches done by the device associated with Alex Cox and in line and around the time that these trips to the shooting range were taking place. So given that, I do think that this is admissible and the door has been open for it.
All right, thank you. So I've considered this exhibit 398, proposed slide 18, which shows two photos of the Daybell property, as well as a reference to an internet search conducted by Alex Cox for citing in a gun, October 8th, 2019, and then some measurements on the property. I've considered the objection of the defense. I'll note the court has to consider under Rule 401 whether something's relevant, and also under 403 whether or not relevant evidence may be excluded for unfair prejudice, confusing the issues, misleading the jury, or other parts presented in that rule. I'll note there's some case law, a case 148 Idaho 176, which is Schmeckel versus Dill, D-I-L-L-E, says Idaho Rule of Evidence 403, however, states that, quote, although relevant evidence may be excluded if its probative value is substantially outweighed by the danger of confusing the issues or misleading the jury, it's well established the trial court has considerable discretion to exclude evidence for reasons that the evidence is confusing or could have been interpreted in many different ways. That internally cites a different case also. When I look at the exhibit, I don't see anything objectionable about the top left reference of an October 8th search by Alex on Grendel Drop 100 to 200 yards or 100 to 300 yards. Considering the objection of the defense, when I look at the photographs of the property and the language underneath on measurements of the property, I do agree with the defense that it appears there were just some measurements taken on the property to show that that could be within the distance of the property. First, I would note that it would seem to me that this coming in through a witness would be more argumentative than establishing a fact if we're looking at where the distance occurred on this property without any direct evidence, although there may be circumstantial evidence. But I do think it's problematic that the measurement goes from the burial site or near the burial site, also showing to the driveway, which was not the driveway that was referenced when testimony was provided about the alleged attempted shooting on Tammy Daybell, whether by a firearm or a paintball gun, whatever it was. That's not where it occurred, and there's no evidence whatsoever that Alex Cox was positioned on the property at any point where that particular mark is at the time that shooting would have occurred. I think that looking at that overall, there's a real potential here that this could confuse issues or mislead the jury, where the point of measurements taken from a burial site, which doesn't really relate to the evidence in relation to this shooting, either on the driveway or that's just a different issue of where the burial site was. So for that reason, I am going to sustain the objection as it relates to slide 18, partially in that the maps and the property measurements at the bottom of the slide would not be permitted. However, the top left part that just indicates searches were done, if that somehow becomes relevant in the form of the testimony, I don't find that to be objectionable. So I'll sustain in part the objection, excluding those parts of the slide, and deny it as to the reference of the internet searches. That'll be the ruling on the motion in limine. Mr. Pryor, do you have any questions on that ruling?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any questions from the state?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, thanks all for bringing that to the court's attention. We'll go ahead and have the jurors brought in then if counsel is ready for continued examination of the witness.
Judge, may I have permission to approach the podium?
Yes.
May I, Judge?
Wait for our jurors.
Oh. I'd rather,
It's more
you
effective.
know what, tunnel vision.
I understand.
It will be a little more effective if they hear it, I guess, right? I could make another comment about what's going to be reported, but I think I'll just stop there.
All right, please. The jury is present.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your patience. We were working on some matters outside of your presence. We're ready to commence with the cross-examination of Detective Hermosillo. Mr. Pryor, once you're ready, you may begin.
Good morning, Officer Hermosillo.
Good morning.
Now, you had an opportunity to listen to the tape and you offered some commentary on that. Do you have a recollection of information that Mr. Daybell felt that there needed to be building a village for the end of times?
No, I don't recall a village. I recall putting up tents, but not a village.
Okay. And the construction of a safe place when the second coming occurs, is that what you recall as well?
No.
Okay. And that there were some discussions about people moving to Rexburg to be safe from, again, the second coming. Do you recall that?
That I do, yes.
Okay. And on the tape, I heard, I believe it was Miss Vallow saying something about, I don't get to pick the colors of what I want. Do you recall hearing that?
Yes.
Okay. And would that suggest to you that they're talking about building buildings?
No.
Does anything in this discussion resemble the construction of any sort of structure?
Repeat the question again, please.
Does any of the discussion on the tape seem to suggest that they're contemplating the construction of some sort of a structure?
No.
So the discussion about blueprints and picking colors has nothing to do with the building of anything. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, sir. That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay. And at this point, this tape again was at what time? The date?
June 8th, 2020 at 9:16 p.m.
And at this point, there's just, would agree that there's a discussion about future plans, correct?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. And at this point on June 8th of 2020, was Tammy Daybell dead?
She was.
Okay. J.J. Vallow, to your knowledge,
Yes.
already passed away?
Yes.
Tylee Ryan?
Yep.
Okay. Alex Cox?
Yes.
Okay. So there wasn't, from your knowledge of this, some nefarious plan to kill or murder anybody, was it?
It was in furtherance of the plan through our investigation to lead the 144,000 or whatever it was that they wanted to do in the future.
Okay. And I guess those 144,000 were going to live in tents?
I have no idea where they were going to live.
Okay. So we're not disputing that there was some plan to have some sort of a refuge in the future in Rexburg, right?
I can't testify to what Mr. Daybell was going to do in the future.
Okay. You seem to be testifying of what you thought he was talking about on this tape, though. How is that different, sir?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
Okay. Now, Judge, I'm moving for admission of Defense Exhibit 104 and 105. And Judge, for the record, yeah. And these had previously been provided to the state. Judge, I also took the liberty of printing off photos, provided those to the state earlier, as well as to Officer Hermosillo to identify those. And my understanding is the state's going to stipulate to the admission of 104 and 105.
Mr. Wood.
Yes, based on our conversation earlier, I'd also note that this is testimony beyond the scope of what was discussed earlier, but as an agreement with Mr. Pryor, we're going to allow that to happen today.
Okay, so I'll allow redirect on that and expanded scope as well. I wanted to also be clear from a note I had from the exhibit clerk. 104, is 104 a separate exhibit and then there's 104A through J, or is 104 the 104A through J?
104 is the exhibit of all of the pictures. 104A through J represent individual pictures within 104 that I was going to emphasize.
Okay.
And I can modify that if that's the court's direction.
I just want to make clear what's being admitted. So right now we just have 104 and 105 offered and admitted. If you go to any of those particular sub exhibits, or we'll mark those and make sure the record's clear.
Okay.
If it all comes in.
Okay. And Judge, I may need my computer if that's the route we're going to go. May I have permission?
If you're going to publish those and need your computer, you can go get it.
Thank you. Or if the court would not have an objection and the state doesn't have an objection, I can use the pictures as well for Elmo if the court has a preference.
Either way you wish to publish this, but if we're publishing the individuals, we'll just make sure we're in the record what's being published.
Okay. All right. May I approach for my computer, Judge?
Yes.
Judge, may I publish the jury by way of HDMI?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Oops. Now, Officer, as part of a search of the Lori Vallow, Alex Cox apartments and garages, there was a search that was conducted on December 19th, 2019. You recall that?
I do.
And at that time, my recollection is the testimony is that Alex Cox's garage was vacated. Is that right?
The apartment we believed Alex was living in, which is 107, was completely vacant. His belongings were found in 175.
Okay. And then the garage of Alex Cox as well, was that vacant?
The garage of 107 was vacant, yes.
And then there was a subsequent search, and you previously talked about some weapons that were found as a result in 175. Is that, would you recall?
That's correct.
Okay, but there were other items that were discovered, and this is by way of stipulation of the parties. And do you recognize this picture?
I do.
Okay, and can you describe and if you could get the marker out, I would appreciate it. And go to the top right corner of that exhibit.
Okay.
right there. And it looks to me, what does that look to you that those 3 rolls are?
Duct tape.
Okay. And then to the left on the top upper right-hand side, are you able to identify what those are?
Looks like a fire starter lighter, maybe.
Okay. And then in the middle, there are some canisters. Can you tell me what those might be?
Right here.
Yes.
I can't tell exactly what it is, but it looks like maybe something to clean guns with.
Okay. Okay. And Judge, this is going to be a little onerous, so I'm going to have to do this a little bit at a time if I could. And then if we could publish again, Judge.
You may.
And then a little bit of a closer look. Again, obviously, with the scripto, it looks like one says. Do you see what those are?
Yes.
What are those?
Torch flame is what it says.
Okay. And then the bottle, the cans is a closer look. What would those be?
Still can't tell.
Okay. In any event, these were items that were found in Lori Vallow's garage. Is that correct?
Correct.
And if those were cans to clean guns, there were also guns found that were identified as being belonging to Alex Cox, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And again, Judge, we're going to try to publish. And again, what are we looking at here?
It looks like a knife.
And
some
on the bottom
tools.
left, do you see what that might be?
Looks like a saw.
Okay. And then do you know what a Dremel is?
Yes.
What's a Dremel?
Tool to drill out certain things.
Okay. And Judge, again, we'll unpublish this and then we'll publish, Judge. Okay. Now, in this particular picture, would you agree we're looking at some other tools as well?
Correct.
And then in the middle there is a tarp. You see that?
I do.
Okay. And then we're looking here at, there was a bucket found, correct? You see that?
I do.
Various gloves.
Correct.
And these were pictures taken by law enforcement. Do you recall that?
I do.
Other than the bucket and the gloves, do you see anything of significance that might be in this picture relevant to this case?
No.
Okay. And again, this picture taken by law enforcement, what does that appear to be?
Tarp.
Okay. Do you have an independent recollection of how many tarps were found in Alex Cox's garage?
I don't know.
Okay. Would it be fair to say there were several?
I don't know how many were found in the
Okay.
garage.
More than a couple though, right?
Sir, I don't know how many were found in the garage.
Okay. And Judge, if I could just have a moment. Oops. Judge, it might be easier if I could use the Elmo as opposed to trying to, for some reason, I can't get this picture to come up. With the court's permission, could I use the Elmo?
You may.
And again, do you recall or recognize this picture as well?
I do.
Okay. And various chemicals. Do you see anything that resembles anything like cement in there?
Not that I can see.
Okay. What do you see here?
Plastic tub with black plastic.
Plastic and white plastic as well
Um,
in the upper
yeah,
left.
it looks like white plastic.
Okay. And again, these are items that were found in Lori Vallow's garage. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then what do you see here?
Appears to be bolt cutters.
Okay. And then I'm looking down at the bottom of this picture and it's on a green bag. Can you make out the green writing that's on that bag?
Looks, I can see maybe a CRETE, so I'd assume some type of concrete.
Okay. And various other chemicals within this picture as well. And these were found within Alex Cox's.
Objection. Counsel's testifying about chemicals. Move to strike.
Abstain.
Do you see any other buckets of any various sorts?
I see buckets. I don't know if they're full or empty.
Okay. Several buckets in the previous pictures as well. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay. And Judge, I'm done with the Elmo. Thank you for the consideration.
All right.
And in addition, I'll wait for you, officer.
Oh, you can go continue.
In addition, there were numerous guns and ammunition as well found in there, correct?
Correct.
And those were all identified as belonging to Alex Cox?
That's who we assume they belong to, is Alex, yes.
And a significant number of knives, weapons, guns that were found in that garage. Would that be fair?
That's fair.
Did you happen to determine when and where all of those knives and guns had been purchased?
I personally did not.
Do you know if anybody did?
I assume they did.
Okay, but you don't know.
I don't know for sure.
Okay. So we have no determination as to when these purchases may have taken place. They could have taken place in Arizona, correct?
They could have, yes.
They could have taken place here as well, correct?
Correct.
And if they took place here, you folks had access, at least one of your witnesses had access to Sportsman's Warehouse, so they might have been able to confirm that, right?
That's correct.
Judge, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Wood, redirect.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right. Then that will conclude the testimony of this witness, Detective Hermosillo. Yeah, states indicated their
I'm so sorry.
policy right now with law enforcement, but is he going to remain under subpoena for purposes of the exclusionary order?
Your Honor, the state would be releasing Mr. Detective Hermosillo from a subpoena.
All right. And Mr. Pryor from the defense?
And Judge Officer Hermosillo was under subpoena from my office, and I'm releasing him from calling him back in this particular case. We accommodated that with the state allowing me to go into things beyond direct to allow us to have Officer Hermosillo not have to come back.
Okay. Well, Officer Hermosillo, sounds like your part in this trial as a witness is concluded, so the exclusionary order would no longer apply. You could watch the trial if you wanted to. It's up to you. Thank you for your testimony. All right. The state may call its next witness.
Your Honor, the state would call Investigator Edwards.
Or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yeah.
And Your Honor, may we approach just briefly?
Yes. All right. Before we begin with the testimony of the witness, there is a brief issue we're going to take up outside the presence of the jurors, and this will be quick. So if we could have the jurors just please stand up and line up in the hall. And then once we've gone through this issue briefly, we'll have the jurors brought right back in. So please rise for the jury.
All rise, please.
All right. Please be seated. Investigator Edwards is on the stand, has been placed under oath. The court has an exclusionary order as it relates to viewing or watching any evidence or otherwise hearing anything about the trial. An issue was potentially raised on this matter. Ms. Blake, if you'd like to inquire, and the court will also conduct an inquiry if necessary about that issue with Investigator Edwards.
Investigator Edwards, did you happen to hear over the radio a portion of someone else's testimony?
Yes.
Was it information that you yourself had already personally reviewed in the case?
Yes,
And specifically, did it deal with the James and Elena story?
it did.
Had you read that yourself as part of the investigation?
Yes.
In any way, did the piece that you heard affect or influence your testimony?
No.
Did it have any impact on what you testified to today?
No.
Thank you. I don't have any additional inquiries on that.
All right. From the defense, any inquiry, Mr. Pryor?
As far as I'm concerned, there's no issue here. This was an inadvertent hearing of some information. I don't find any objection that I could even realistically make to suggest that there's been any influence whatsoever here.
Okay. Well, based on Ms. Blake's line of questioning and without any objection, the court likewise finds there's nothing that was any intentional or material violation of the exclusionary order that would affect the ability of the witness to testify. So thank you for your candor to the court, prosecution, as well as the witness. We'll go ahead and have the jurors brought back in, and you can commence with your direct. So if everybody please rise again for the jurors.
I'm tired. Well,
Your Honor, the jury is present and count.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, the witness has been placed under oath. Ms. Blake, if you'd like to commence with direct, you may.
Thank you. Would you please state your name and spell it for the record?
My name is Nicholas Edwards, Nicholas, Edwards, Edwards.
Where are you currently employed?
So I'm employed with the Idaho Office of the Attorney General.
How long have you been employed with them?
Been there 5 years.
What is your current title or position?
So my current position is the Idaho ICAC Task Force Commander. I'm the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force Commander.
Have you held additional positions since you've been with the Attorney General's office?
I have.
What are the other positions?
I was the lead over the special investigations unit, as well as the investigator there at one point as well.
Prior to working with the Attorney General's office, did you have any other work in law enforcement?
I did. I was employed with the Pocatello Police Department on the east side of the state for about 15 years.
And what positions did you hold within the Pocatello Police Department?
Number of positions. I was in patrol. I also was a school resource officer at one point. I was also an active member of their special weapons and tactics team. I was a sniper team leader, honor guard, a couple of others, field training officer, a number of normal law enforcement positions in that city.
And in order to be a law enforcement officer, do you have any additional training?
I do. Yeah, I've got, I'm also an active member of the Idaho Army National Guard. I've had that's not necessarily for the, are you asking for law enforcement specifically?
With regard to law enforcement, do you have additional training or certificates?
Yeah, I hold a number of post certificates, basic, intermediate, advanced, mastery. Also an instructor in topics, law enforcement topics, to teach other police officers on a number of topics to include sniper observer tactics, SWAT tactics, and others.
And then you mentioned you also are a member of the National Guard.
I am. So I'm a member of the Idaho Army National Guard. The Idaho Army National Guard. I've been in the militaries for 24 years now, and currently possess the rank of Command Sergeant Major at the Idaho Training Center here in Boise.
Do you have any degrees?
I do. Formal education. I have an associate's degree in law enforcement, a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and I have a master's degree in strategic leadership.
And you talked about some positions you held in Pocatello involving SWAT and sniper training. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. I was part of the sniper observer team for a lot of years, trained with the team regularly, also instructed many other students on precision rifle courses.
And then in your work on the SWAT team and or the sniper program, did you familiarize yourself with various types of weapons?
I did.
And particularly, did you work closely with rifles?
I did.
Did that include assault rifles?
Yes.
Do you also have experience with them being in the National Guard?
I do.
Have you ever used paintball guns?
Yes, I have.
And in what capacity have you used paintball guns?
I've used them personally for recreation, but I've also trained with them. They're often a training tool for law enforcement and military personnel.
And you indicated that your previous position with the Attorney General's office was part of the special investigations.
I am. Yeah, it was.
Do you recall being contacted or your office being contacted by Fremont County?
Yes.
And would that have been approximately April of 2020?
Correct.
Did you become involved in an investigation at Fremont County's request at that time?
I did.
What was that investigation?
So it was we got a request to assist in what was considered a joint investigation between a number of agencies into the death of 4 individuals, Tammy Daybell, JJ and Tylee, and then Charles Vallow.
Is it fair to say that a large focus of your investigation was into circumstances surrounding Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
Did you also assist in the investigations regarding the missing children?
Yes.
At some point, did you assist in the investigation involving the homicide of the children?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that when you became involved, it was a joint investigation?
It was.
And do you recall some of the other agencies involved?
The Fremont County Sheriff's Office, Rexburg Police Department, FBI, Chandler Police Department, a number of others.
And through your investigation, did you conduct interviews?
I did.
Did you review various phone data?
Yes.
Did you review other documents?
Yes.
Did you discuss the case with other investigators as you were going through?
Yes.
And in preparation of your testimony today, did you create an exhibit?
I have.
Do you believe that this exhibit would assist you in testifying today?
It would.
Do you believe it would assist the jurors in understanding the evidence and testimony we'll be talking about?
It will.
Your Honor, I have what's been marked as State's Exhibit 398. I have a copy for counsel and I have a copy that has been initialed. And I do have a courtesy copy for Your Honor as well.
All right. And I believe I've already got my courtesy copy.
I provided a printout, and so I have the actual jump drive.
Very well. Thank you, ma'am.
And if the witness may be shown the one with the initials.
Yes.
Yep, that's me.
And Investigator Edwards, do you recognize that jump drive?
I do.
Are those in fact your initials on it?
They are.
And Your Honor, I would move for admission of State's Exhibit 398.
Any objection?
In its present form, Judge, no.
Very well. Exhibit 398 is admitted, incorporating the court's previous ruling on a motion in limine. Ms. Blake, you can continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. And the state would request permission to publish.
You may.
And Investigator Edwards, were you the lead investigator into the Tammy Daybell case for the Attorney General's office?
I was.
Can you tell us a little bit about what we are seeing on this slide?
So this is a timeline that I created when I came into this particular case. I came in late. We were April of 2020. And so in an effort to better understand the timeline and all of the information, I put it into a timeline chronologically to better understand what I needed to do. So this particular timeline starts in 2018 when Chad and Lori meet for the first time, and goes through June 9th, 2020, when Tylee and JJ are found on the Daybell property, with specific kind of highlighted areas throughout what I consider kind of major events, looking at the timeline.
And with that first event in October of 2018, why was that the starting point on this timeline for you?
I believe that's when this case really starts. I think that was the first recognizable event.
And that was when Chad and Lori met for the first time?
Correct.
And when we look at this slide, can you talk to us a little bit about these particular events?
So on October 26th, 2018, St. George, Utah, Chad and Lori meet for the first time. A few days later, on October 30th, 2018, we know that Chad does some Google searches and searches those particular things: Lori Vallow, Charles Vallow, and Lori Vallow photos. And at this time, Lori is actually living in Mesa, Arizona at the time. I think if you click one more, it'll show a yellow line. And so the slides that follow, and this one included, I have a yellow box or a yellow line that will kind of track along the timeline to show exactly where this took place.
And at the time Chad and Lori meet and these searches are conducted, do you know if Charles Vallow was still alive?
He was still alive.
And what about Tammy Daybell?
Yes, absolutely.
And then can you talk to us a little bit about these events?
Yeah, so if you can click one more, maybe. There it is. So during this time frame that's highlighted in yellow, on November 16th through the 17th, we know that Chad traveled to Mesa, Arizona for a Preparing the People conference, and he stayed with Lori in her residence. And this is just, almost less than a month from the time he'd first met her.
Judge, I'm going to object. Non-responsive.
Sustained.
On that November conference, how long had it been since Chad and Lori had first met?
Less than a month.
And it was your understanding Chad ended up staying at Lori's residence?
Yes.
And then that next date there, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
January 6th through the 10th, that Chad travels back to Arizona.
And was it your understanding Lori was in Arizona at that time?
It is.
And then that next date on there?
February 8th, 2019, we know that divorce proceedings were initiated by Charles Vallows with Lori.
At any point through the investigation, did you find any indication that Chad Daybell was planning on or looking into divorcing Tammy Daybell?
No.
And can you talk to us about this particular event?
So again, we're moving kind of down that timeline. March 19th to the 21st, 2019, Chad travels to Arizona with plane tickets that had been purchased by Lori.
And again, during this time, was Charles Vallow still alive?
He was.
And was Tammy Daybell still alive?
She was.
Can we talk about the first date here?
Can. April 2nd through the 4th, Lori travels to Idaho Falls. Shortly, you may click that a couple of times. There we go. May 5th through the 7th, both Chad and Lori separately are conducting internet searches for malachite rings.
Do you know what type of rings Well, let me back up. Do you know if Chad and Lori were ultimately married?
I do. And they were.
They?
Yes.
Do you know what type of rings they exchanged?
Malachite rings.
And then this last date here?
So on June 29th, Charles actually sent Tammy an email regarding her ongoing relationship with their spouses and actually requested contact from Charles. And the email, in quotes there, says, "Tammy, my name is Charles Vallows. I have some vital and disturbing information regarding your husband." Yes, ma'am. I apologize. Where do you want me to start? Tammy? All right. "Tammy, my name is Charles Vallow. I have some vital and disturbing information regarding your husband and my wife, Lori. I apologize to be the one sending this, but something has to be done. I feel it's best if I shed some light on the issue." Charles also sent Chad an email and confronted him regarding the relationship as well.
In relation to this email, through the investigation, were you able to determine if Tammy ever saw the email?
I was not.
And do you know when Charles Vallow was killed?
So he was killed less than 2 weeks after this email on July 11th, 2019.
And on this particular slide, can we talk about the first date?
Yep. On July 2nd, prior to Charles Vallow's death, Charles told Lori he was going to go to Idaho Falls to meet with Tammy. And Lori's text to Charles stated, quote, "She won't see you. She is my friend. She won't listen to you. Go ahead. You are ridiculous."
Through the investigation, was there any indication that Charles Vallow actually traveled to Idaho?
No.
And then what happened 9 days later?
Charles Vallows was shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex, in Arizona.
And can you, starting first with the July 13th, 2019, can you indicate who the message is being sent from and to, and read that message into the record?
I can. So this slide in blue is Chad and in pink is Lori. So the first one is July 13th, 2019. Chad sends a text message to Lori and says, "I'm heading to bed so that I can come snuggle tightly against you. I adore you. You are truly my best friend on earth and throughout eternity. See you in a minute."
And again, this is just 2 days after Charles Vallow is shot and killed.
Correct.
And then if you move to July 14th, if you would also read those messages into the record.
Okay, I'll start on the left, July 14th, 2019. Chad states, "I need so badly to just gently kiss you for hours." And then the time is 8:33 p.m. Chad again, "It would likely lead to other activities." Time is 8:34. Lori replies, "Likely or lucky," at 8:34. Chad replies, it would luckily lead to nakedness," at 8:35. Shift to the other side.
Yes, please.
Okay. July 14th, 2019. Know that Chad has written a romantic sexual story called James and Elena and sent it to Lori. Chad sends a text, "I love you, Elena," with heart emojis. "We have an amazing love story," sent at 9:54. Chad again, "Heading to bed and then heading to Lily. Can't wait to talk in the morning. You are fabulous." Heart emoji, fire, kiss at 9:57. Chad again, "Definitely loving you throughout the night. Fire emoji at 2:32.
And there's a reference there to James and Elena. Through the investigation, were you able to determine who James was in reference to?
It was Chad.
And who was Elena in reference to?
Lori.
There's also a name in there, Lily. Did you learn who Lily referenced?
Also Lori.
And then if we move to the messages on July 15th, if you could read those into the record.
July 15th, 2019, Lori sends a text message at 11:43. "Taking off to Vegas. Last ones on the plane, just making it. Wishing you were on the other side of this flight. Love you so much." And then 2 heart emojis. Chad replies, "Love you more. Keep me posted, my beloved angel," with a heart emoji.
And then looking at the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here?
Yeah, so as we move, again, kind of moving down this timeline, at July 18th, 2019, a text message from Lori to Chad, where she states, quote, "So I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March. So it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. They can't tell me to who, of course, but it's done. I'll still get $4,000 a month from SS, believe to be Social Security. End of quote.
And were you able to determine who Ned was in reference to through the investigation?
Yeah, that next paragraph there, Ned is a name that Chad and Lori assigned using it in reference to Charles Vallows. Charles had a $1 million life insurance policy with Lori as the beneficiary, but changed the beneficiary to his sister, Kay Woodcock, approximately 4 months prior to his death.
And when you're reading that message, did it catch your attention?
It did.
And what about it caught your attention?
Clearly, this was something that was of importance to both of them, both Chad and Lori.
And then looking at the next slide here, are these additional messages that were recovered that were between Chad and Lori?
They are.
And starting with the July 18th, could you read those messages into the record?
I can. July 18th, 2019, Lori sends a text message. This is sweet. I miss you desperately. Heart emoji at 8:34. Chad replies, you are so adorable, beautiful, wonderful, heavenly, luscious, and angelic. So many divine attributes rolled into one dynamic, desirable package. I want you even more desperately than you want me. 2 kiss emojis.
And then the next one's on July 22nd. Can you also read those in?
I can. Chad sends a text message at 2:45 p.m. Love you. Going with Garth in an hour to see the other side of heaven too. Missing you desperately, but so excited to be with you. Heart emoji, heart emoji. Lori replies, you will love it, with a heart emoji. Chad replies, not as much as I love you, with a heart emoji. Lori replies, I love you. You will enjoy the scenery. Looks a lot like Kauai a lot. Looks like Kauai a lot. With 2 beach emojis, I imagine those are. Chad replies with a smiley face. Lori replies, hopefully we will be there someday soon together. Chad replies, that is the plan, with a fire emoji. Lori states, and my greatest desire.
Was there something about these particular messages that caught your attention?
That second to last one where Chad states, that is the plan.
We talked before that Chad and Lori were married. Do you know where they ended up getting married?
In Hawaii.
And do you know when they were married, if Tylee and JJ were present?
They were not.
And then looking at this next slide, can you talk to us about that July 26th message?
Can. So this is a text message that Chad sent to Lori. That's a screenshot of what was extracted. It says from Bubby, to be Chad. Tonight I figured out who I feel like. I'm a grown-up version of Harry Potter who has to live with the Dudleys in his little space under the stairs. Every few weeks I get to escape and have amazing adventures with my goddess lover. But then I have to return to my place under the stairs feeling trapped. But I sense permanent freedom is coming, with 2 heart emoji, or rather 2 fire emojis.
And when this message is sent, again, was Tammy still alive?
She was.
And then was there anything else in relation to that message that stood out to you?
The top one.
Yes.
The permanent freedom is coming is, again, like the previous one already talked about, the plan, permanent freedom, stood out to me for sure.
And at that point, was Charles Vallow still alive?
Oh.
And then if we can move down to that July 30th, can you read that text?
I can. July 30th, 2019, Chad again sends Lori a text message. It says, yes, quote, yes, we might need to release a little steam when we talk. Anyway, this is the chart that checks what percentages mortals are still in their body. It worked for my friend's wife who died, my neighbor, George Bush, Stanley Lee, etc. I kind of forgot about it because we've been dealing with zombies and demonic entities. But this afternoon, Tammy said she felt lightheaded, as if her body and spirit weren't connected. Goes on to say, quote, I got the inspiration to go back to my original death percentages that helped us track Charles, Ned, etc. Tammy is very close. Her percentage has fallen steadily since Hiplos left. It's encouraging.
Through the investigation, did you determine who Hiplos or Iplos would have been referencing?
I don't remember that.
And in this, did you notice whose death percentages are being referenced?
Yes, Tammy's.
And can you talk to us a little bit about what we're seeing on this next slide?
So August of 2019, we know that Chad again traveled to Arizona where he stayed with Lori. And on August 14th, 2019, Lori actually takes a screenshot of 2 wedding bands that she purchased from Serenity Rings. Same type.
And again, at this time, Tammy Daybell is still alive.
She is.
And on this next slide, can you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here?
So this is also text message content on the far right between Lori, Zulema, Chad. On September 15th, 2019, Zulema travels to Rexburg under the Lori and Chad's direction. Zulema then assisted Chad in getting out of the house so that Lori and Chad could meet. And that's evident in the text message. The top one is a text message that's actually from Chad that is sent to Zulema from Lori, if that makes sense. But from Chad, he says to Lori, please have Zulema send a message to me that she's in Rigby and wanted to see if I could come listen to her talk tonight about her trip to Chile. Lori then sends a message again to Zulema. He wants you to send a text so he can come talk to us tonight. Zulema then sends a text message complying with Chad's request to Chad. Hello, Chad. I'm in Rigby. I want to see if you would come listen to me talk about my trip to Chile. Chad replies to Zulema, tonight? ? Zulema replies to Chad, yes, tonight. Chad to Zulema, I can be there at 7:30. Thanks. And then Zulema to Chad, awesome. See you then.
And then there's another note there regarding September 16th. What did you learn regarding September 16th?
That on September 16th, 2019, Chad, Lori, Alex, and Zulema travel to Mesa Falls and Island Park together.
And then looking at this next slide, can you talk to us a little bit about these messages?
So on October 3rd, 2019, there's a text message from Chad to Lori at 21:31 hours, which is 9:30 p.m. Good night, Angel Lily. So excited to go on our date. Fire emoji. October 4th, 2019, text from Chad to Lori at 04:20, which is 4 o'clock in the morning. Dreaming of caressing you in bed. I adore you and Osholo you. Heart emoji and a fire emoji.
And were these copied over as found?
They were.
Do you believe that that message contained a typo?
I do.
And which word do you believe is not accurate?
Judge, I'm going to object. Calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Through the investigation, did you ever learn of any kind of a meaning of Usholo?
No.
And then on that final note there, can you tell us what that's about?
October 4th through the 5th, Chad urges Tammy to go visit her family in Springfield, Utah.
Through the investigation, did you learn if Tammy actually made that trip?
She did.
And can you now talk to us about the text that we're seeing on this slide?
So during these texts, we do know that Tammy has made it down to Utah during this time, during these text messages. So the first one, text from Chad to Lori at 8:45 in the morning. Thank you for sending me that paragraph, beautiful Lily. I'm eager to see you soon. Trying to hasten her departure. I love you endlessly, with a kiss, heart, and fire emoji. Same day, Chad to Lori at 10:24 in the morning. Again, Tammy is still in Utah. It is dragging on here, but I should be to your house around 11:15. I want to talk to you first, of course. So maybe tell her I can talk from 2:15 to 1. And then a follow-up text from Lori to Alex, her brother, at 4:29 in the afternoon. Again, Tammy's still in Utah. Quote, we are supposed to go on a real date tonight, but we are discussing it. Perhaps an evening at home would be better so we are not out and about. I'll let you know. But you could come and sing with us after your shower. Heart emoji. The last one, October 5th, 2019. Again, Tammy is still in Utah. There are 3 deleted messages on the Lori Vallow iCloud account from Chad. And those are going to be shown on the next slide.
And in relation to when Tammy was in Utah, do you know where Lori was living at that time?
At that time, she had actually moved up to Rexburg.
And do you know where Chad was during that time period?
Rexburg.
And if we move to this next slide, can you read these messages as well?
These text messages were sent to Lori Vallow from Chad Daybell just days before the attempted shooting that we get into in the next slide, I believe. First one, hello, sweet
Judge,
angel.
could I have some foundation as to the date these text messages supposedly took place?
I think the witness just indicated that, Your Honor.
It's overruled.
Also, if we move that message just barely up, the date is time stamped on them. You'd have to go.
That skipped.
You'd probably have to exit this particular.
Can you see the?
I can see the text. Yeah, they're going to be right around the same date at the bottom. So the first one,
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. There's no indication of who sent these messages to who. In fact, the notation says unknown.
And
Response.
Your Honor, I think if you look over to the right-hand screen, there's an indication on the slide of who the text messages went to and from.
Okay.
And Judge, could I voir dire a native objection?
Well, in lieu of that, the exhibit's been admitted. I think that's appropriate for cross. There is an indication, so I'll overrule the objection at this time. Ms. Blake, this is a lengthy enough exhibit. I think we are going to need to break for lunch before we get through it, and we're right at noon. Is there a time you think that's more appropriate to stop than now?
I had intended to just get through this slide and then stop, but if the court would prefer we stop now, we can absolutely do that.
Let's go ahead and go through the slide. That's fine. Thank you.
If you can read these into the record.
I can. First text message. Hello, sweet angel. Big news about Tammy. Please let me know if you are awake and can talk. I love you. And then 2 emojis shortly after. The short version is that she has been switched. Tammy is in limbo, and a level 3 demonic entity named Viola is in her body. It happened about 10 p.m. and was done by Tammy's sister, Sam, who I always knew was 3D, but it turns out she's multiple creation. Next, quote, Viola has been attached for about a year to my niece, Danica, who is Sam's 12-year-old daughter. I have connected with Tammy in limbo, and she is very frustrated and upset. She wants Viola removed as soon as possible. Viola seemed to be similar to Penelope. The personality differences from Tammy should be evident quickly. Please seek a confirmation on this, but I have checked 3 times since I got home and get more affirmative answers each time. Next quote. Sam is much like Brandon. She has been my biggest enemy over the years. She refuses to read my books and threw the biggest fit when we moved to Idaho. She has only visited us when the kids got married and always fled Idaho within hours, like she was being burned. She's definitely comparable to Brandon and Summer. The last text, not fully sure of the timing for removal, but once her actions verify the differences, I don't want to wait.
And Your Honor, if we would like to break for lunch now.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that. We'll take our lunch recess at this time. Come back on the record if we can at 1 o'clock, please.
All rise, please.
There's more to come in the trial of Chad Daybell. Press subscribe so you don't miss any of our continuing coverage right here from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.